Going on, everyone? Back again with another deck tech of one of my decks. Today this is my Golgari deck. So this is Meren of Clan Toth. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so first off with the lands, I'm running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 basic swamps. And 11 basic forests. So 22 total basics. Anytime I run a two-color deck, it's mostly going to be basics and then just some random other lands. So I'm running Desert of the Glorified. Mostly this is just in here. I hardly ever even play this. Mostly just here for the cycle to be able to draw a card if I need it. Same thing here with the Polluted Mire. And then some dual lands. I got Blooming Marsh, Tainted Wood, Temple of Malady, Hissing Quagmire. It's good in there, but to be able to have turn it into a creature with Death Touch is nice to be able to do that at instant speed. Kind of keeps people from attacking you. Woodland Cemetery and Overgrown Tomb. So that's the land package there. So this deck definitely relies heavily on creatures. It is a creature deck, so being able to, every time a creature dies, with Meren, you get an experience counter as long as she's on the battlefield. And now at the beginning of your end step, you can return a creature with converted mana cost equal to the number of experience counters that you have from your graveyard to the battlefield back in play. So this deck is going to rely heavily on creatures, heavily on returning those creatures with strong enter the battlefield effects to basically be able to double up those effects and affect everything else everyone else is doing. So a lot of creatures in this deck with a lot of ETBs. But right now let's go ahead and get into the artifact section. So for Phyrexian Altar, this is a bit of an aristocrats deck. Well, it's really an aristocrats deck, but Phyrexian Altar, being able to sacrifice a creature, any of your creatures, you'll be able to add 1 mana of any color, super strong because you want to get those experience counters going as quickly as possible. Skull Clamp, obviously just great card draw there, being able to equip it, sacrifice a creature, and then being able to draw 2 cards off of it. Desecrated Tomb, we've got creatures coming in and out of the graveyard like crazy in this deck, so every time, this is really good in this deck in particular, because it doesn't trigger every time a creature comes out of the graveyard. It only triggers basically once a turn. So if 1 or more comes out, you get a bat token, right? But most of the time we're only taking 1 out. So it basically provides us a bat token almost every one of our turns once we get Meren going. Ashnod's Altar, same thing, be able to sacrifice a creature and add 2 colorless mana. Pretty strong, just another good sacrifice outlet to be able to kill our creatures. Golgari Signet, just in there for just simply for the ramp early turns. Panharmonicon, with all of our creatures having ETBs, this just doubles them up, super strong in the deck. Lightning Greaves, they're obviously just to protect Meren, because she is basically remove on site commander. She will get killed multiple times a game. Most of the time, a lot of games you don't even get to cast her because it just gets hated off the board. So Lightning Greaves to protect her. Leyline of the Void, just great in case you're facing any other graveyard decks. It's just going to shut them down completely. And then the fact, obviously, if it's in your opening hand, to be able to play it for free is good. But it's really just there to hose other graveyards. Evolutionary Leap, another sack outlet, being able to sack it and then basically keep flipping cards until you get a creature. That's exactly what we want to be doing. Greater Good, being able to sacrifice them. This is normally a drawback in a lot of decks because you want to have big creatures. Most of our creatures aren't big at all, but we don't care. We don't care if we're going to sacrifice the creature, right? Draw cards equal to the power and then discard 3 cards. So if we draw 1 and discard 3, normally in a normal deck, that's card disadvantage, but there's actually times when you want this to be able to get something that's in your hand, out of your hand, and into your graveyard. So discarding cards in this deck the graveyard is just basically an extension of your hand. So it's definitely not a disadvantage in this deck. Guardian Project, just there so we can draw cards every time we play a creature. Carpet of Flowers, someone's always playing blue. So if you can get this on turn 1, this thing's going to spiral out of control really quickly and you're going to get a lot of mana. Dictate of Erebos, obviously since we're sacrificing creatures, why not make other people sacrifice theirs at the same time since they're not getting the value out of it. Animate Dead, just being able to bring something out of the graveyard and bring it back to the battlefield for 2 mana. Classic. Assassin's Trophy, just good targeted removal. Avoid Fate, this is really good. It's kind of one that people don't usually see coming. When you got your commander out and you're playing black-green, most people don't think you have something if they try to target Meren to get rid of her, and you basically can counter it with a green spell. Most people aren't seeing something like that coming. Most people don't even know about this card since it is fairly old. But this is just great in any green deck to be able to protect what you got out there. Golgari Charm, Entomb, obviously being able to search for a creature and throw it into our graveyard from our library, super powerful. Savage Summoning, same thing, just being able to play Meren without getting her countered, pretty helpful. Or, you know, we've got some other cards that have tutor effects built into them, so we want to be able to, those cards to stick. Mausoleum Secrets, Heroic Intervention, being given everything, you know, hexproof and indestructible, pretty good too. Vampiric Tutor, just let us go get whatever the hell we want to get. Tragic Slip, in this deck, I mean, you're triggering Morbid like crazy. This is, I mean, this is Swords to Plowshares. I mean, yeah, it doesn't exile, but I mean, like, this thing's going to get rid of anything, gets around indestructible. For 1 black mana and as much creatures as we got dying, I mean, you're never going to not trigger Morbid on this to get the -13 clause. So this card's amazing in this deck. If you got a Meren deck and you don't have that, I mean, it's an auto include. Village Rites, again, just being able to sack creatures, draw cards. All right, so let's get into the sorceries. So we got Reanimate, again, being able to take a creature from any graveyard, not even just ours, and put it on the battlefield for one mana. Yeah, we got to pay the life for it, but as commander, you got 40 life, who cares, right? Read the Bones, just a classic black draw spell. Torment of Hailfire, just there. You know, you're never gonna. This isn't a game ender in this deck. I don't have any way to generate enough mana to be able to do this unless I do it super late game or something. But it's just basically there to just kind of like a removal spell. Just get that last little bit of damage in on everybody. It's mostly there because it hits everybody really. Blood for Bones, Victimize, another phenomenal card. You know, just a little uncommon, but being able to, this effect, you know, being able to choose a target card in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature, and then return it to the battlefield taps, super strong. Living Death, one of the big ones in this deck. I mean, if you're facing a mill deck or something, there is a mill deck in our play group, and if you're facing a mill deck and this thing, and they're milling you, and the amount of sacrificing creatures that you're doing, and this thing gets to go off, it's going to be a bad time for everybody because you're going to get a lot of creatures back on the battlefield. But yeah, super good card in this deck. So here's the creature package. The rest are all creatures, so I got a thick chunk of creatures in here since this is a graveyard recursion creature entering the battlefield deck. So we've got Azoni Thousand-Eyed. This is probably one of the best cards in the deck because you've got... When this thing goes into the graveyard, when it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard, right? You're going to have a lot of creatures in your graveyard, and this thing that comes down, a lot of times it's putting 15, 16 tokens into play, and if you got a Skull Clamp, I mean, you're going berserk. I mean, you're going to draw all the cards. Eternal Witness, obviously being able to recur this back and forth to be able to get whatever we want out of our graveyard back into our hand. Cards bananas in this deck. Spore Frog, another one. The fact that you can sacrifice this to basically fog for the turn, so you know everybody calls him the Fog Frog, right? But in being in a deck where you can recur it every turn, it gets pretty gross when nobody can do any damage to you, right? Because you can just keep bringing it back and sacrificing it. So great card in the deck. I know everybody hates to see it. I don't think there's a Meren deck in the world or any graveyard recursion deck that doesn't run Spore Frog, and everybody hates it, but it's just too good not to run. You got to run it. Carrion Feeder, you can sacrifice a creature to put a 1/1 counter on Carrion Feeder. This is really just in there to get that engine going. It's a quick one drop. You need to start getting those experience counters with Meren. So it's really just in there so you can just start sacking and sacking. One of the best cards you see in your opening hand in this deck. Filigree Familiar. It's just basically in there whenever it's just kind of a little value, right? So whenever it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, which can be relevant in this deck since it is a very controlling deck and it runs long games. But whenever it dies, you draw a card. So you can bring it back, gain 2 life, instantly sack it to draw a card. At the end of the turn, bring it back, gain 2 life, and at the end of somebody else's turn, sacrifice it, draw another card. Super strong. Having the 2 effects on one body. Grim Harspect, just a, whenever another non-token creature dies, you draw a card. So it doesn't, you know, it's just there for the card draw. You're sacking so many creatures, why not draw the cards out of it? Viscera Seer, just a sack outlet, sacrifice a creature, scry 1. Liliana Heretical Healer, super easy to flip, and then when you do flip her, you know, she gets pretty good on the backside, so definitely a great creature. And the fact that if she dies as a planeswalker, she flips back to a creature in your graveyard, you can then reoccur the creature, so you can, you know, you can use her second ability to bring a creature back, then she'll then die, go to the graveyard, then bring her back, and you can just loop it. Sakura Tribuilder, really just in there so you can sack it and get lands. This is basically your, you know, one of your ramp cards in this deck. Since we're running so creature heavy and so dependent on creatures, all of our ramp and effects like that are going to be on creatures. Zulaport Cutthroat, obviously whenever another creature dies, they lose a life, you gain a life. A lot of creatures are going to be dying, so it's good. Viridian Emissary, whenever it dies, you search your library for a basic force card, put it on the battlefield. That's it. Just surely there, you know, surely there for ramp. Burning Rune Demon, this thing just came out, and it is an absolute powerhouse in this deck. The fact that when it enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for exactly 2 cards not named Burning Rune Demon, and put 1 in your hand and 1 in your graveyard. Well, it's Commander, so we're not running anything with the same 2 names anyways, since it's a singleton format. And being able to basically, I mean, this might as well say put 2 cards in your hand, because you're going to get something in your hand, and then you're going to throw something in your graveyard. And in this deck, the deck in your graveyard is the same thing. So this card's insane at 6 mana. If you can get this in your graveyard and start recurring it, it's going to be real bad. Deathrite Shaman, just one of the best one-drop plays you can play, and if you're running green and black. I mean, it ramps you, it exiles stuff from the graveyard, it lets you gain 2 life. I mean, the card's insane. Gatecreeper Vine, just there to be able to get more lands, just part of your ramp package for your plants. Wall of Blossoms, just there for the card draw. Whenever enters the battlefield, draw a card. Merciless Executioner, I believe I'm running 3 of these type of effects. I think there's like 4 you could be running at this point, but I'm only running 3. But whenever this enters the battlefield, making other people sacrifice creatures, obviously you're usually sacking this to itself, putting it in your graveyard. At the end of turn, you're bringing it back, sacrificing it to itself, bringing it in the graveyard. Each time you do that, the opponent's got to sack, everyone's got to sack a creature, so if they have one, this card's really good. Spike Feeder, really good. Comes in with +1/+1 counters on it. You can, at instant speed, you know, you can remove a counter on it. I don't ever do the pay 2 and put a 1/1 counter on it. I just do the remove a 1/1 counter for free and gain 2 life, but it's just there if you need some life gain. It's an easy way to basically sacrifice it unto itself to get a trigger. Fleshbag Marauder, same thing as Merciless Executioner. Solemn Simulacrum, great in a deck, great in any deck really, but you know, when you can recur it, it gets even better. So being able to get that land and then being able to draw that card when it dies is great. Gary, for obvious reasons, being able to put him into play and drain everybody for life multiple times it's pretty good. Noxious Gear Hulk, another just great removal spell on a body. Plague Crafter, probably the best one of, well, it is the best one of the everybody sacks a creature card, because if they don't have a creature, then they basically they have to sacrifice a planeswalker, and if they can't, they discard a card, so even better. I mean, if you could be running 4 of these, you would. Liliana Standard Bearer, this is good because you can flash it in and you draw X cards and pay X life, where that's the number of creatures that died. Number of creatures, you that died under your control this turn. So you can, a lot of times you can flash this out just to get some card draw. Reclamation Sage just in there so it can target the artifacts and enchantments whenever it comes in the battlefield, destroy stuff. Grave Titan for obvious reasons. Making 2/2 zombies every time, making two 2/2 zombies every time it hits the battlefield. Really good, especially when you can attack, you know, and then sack it at the end and bring it back and make more. Gets out of control pretty quick. Crypt Ghast, just in there to be able to, you know, a little bit more mana ramp. Yahenni, sack outlet, it's got haste, and then the fact that, you know, you can give it indestructible is pretty damn good at instant speed too. Shriekmaw, more removal. Bane of Progress, more removal for enchantments and things like that. Wood Elves, just more ramp. Satyr Wayfinder, just a way to be able to throw some things into the graveyard. Vampire Hexmage, it's easy to be able to take, it does come in handy. You'd be surprised how many people play on 1/1 counters, but being able to basically sacrifice it and then remove all the counters from a target permanent and take down a Planeswalker, can take down anything, you know, any kind of Hydra, thing like that. But it's also, a lot of people forget it does have First Strike, but which isn't bad for you know, for back in the day for a 2/1, but it's really just there so you can sacrifice it itself so you can start kind of get going and start fueling your graveyard. Viridian Zealot, Disciple of Bolus, Priest of the Bloodright, just a great finisher in this deck. The fact that when you play it, right, it's supposed to be a downside on the card, that when you play it, you get a 5/5 demon creature when it enters the battlefield, right? But then at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. Oh no, but that's only with Priest of the Bloodright out. So we don't care. We just play this. And then the card says, basically, play it for 5 and get a 5/5 demon, and then sacrifice the thing, bring it back, get a 5/5 demon. Sacrifice the thing, get it back, get a 5/5 demon. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you don't, a lot of times you're not even paying the 5. It just winds up in your graveyard. And you're just bringing it out and getting 5/5 demons at will, so it's pretty good. Gonti, this is kind of a pet card of mine. I love to be able to mess with people and look at their cards, take something off the top of their deck, and be able to play it later. Just always loved Gonti since he came out. So, Sidisi, obviously, just a tutor effect, another one, being able to get something, whatever you need out at the time. And then Woodland Bellower, same thing, just basically when he comes in, you can get your creature to cost 3 or less and put it on the battlefield. So card's pretty good in the deck, and you just keep recurring it. So as you can see though, the deck doesn't have a lot of huge win conditions. It basically just wins through attrition. It's just gonna grind you down. It's like a boa constrictor, right? It's just gonna control the game to a point when, you know, we're just gonna outvalue the opponent. And then just win with some just little creatures for the most part. A couple of demons and some small creatures. But basically, that's the deck. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. See ya.